It's never going to change. We're going to rail against it, and it's never going to change. So I think we should go back and look at games that really changed our childhood.
I agree.
I think that's a good segue.
Why you gotta say that out loud? I was thinking about that for the past 15 minutes. Talking about those games, I'll go first because I mentioned one earlier. Call of Duty 2 / Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1. And if you've never played, stop it. If you've never played Big Red 1, it's because it was a PlayStation 2 exclusive.
Yeah.
One of the very first PlayStation exclusives.
Is it better than Call of Duty or?
Yeah. Two games that were.
You have a lot of attitude, and you're just in the war, and you're like so angsty.
Angsty teenager in the war.
Yeah.
But these games,
you're like, I gotta fire a gun.
We're gonna talk a lot about some like multiplayer type of games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
These were not that.
Oh yeah.
These were games that you played on your own. But I remember on a Saturday morning, sitting down with my PlayStation 2. See, I didn't have like not the built-in thing, but I didn't have like a shelf that it always sat on. I had to take it out of my room, go in the living room, plug the three cables into the back of the TV, and I sat down with my corded PlayStation 2 controller.
Now, did you know him at that point in time?
Wait, what year was this? Like, how old were you?
2019. I don't know. It was next year.
Next year?
Sam and I met.
Are you from the future?
Sam and I knew each other in like 6th or 7th grade.
It was
that's what I'm saying. I know you guys
been
way back.
It would have been around then. But that's what made it so great to me because you sat down with your bowl.
Have to tell us about stories of Sam's childhood here.
Stay tuned for the post podcast live stream. Maybe you'll get a story.
Post credit scene.
That's what you can be thinking about. No, we
you
sitting
can rant
down.
about Sam.
Stop it.
Yes.
Sitting down on a Saturday morning. And just playing this game until one of my family members woke up, normally my sisters. And they were like, I'm going to use the TV now. And I'm like, but I've just been playing for 6 hours. I need to keep going. Yeah. And that was the other thing. The campaigns were long. They were long campaigns. Well, and it was great. Yeah. And that's what I remember is that sitting down now. And I've got some games that are more multiplayer that you played with friends, stuff like that I'm sure we'll end up talking about. Yeah. But that was the quintessential game for me. Call of Duty 1 was the first-person shooter I ever played. And I loved it. And when I got Call of Duty 2 / Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1 for my PlayStation 2, I loved it. And it was my Saturday mornings.
Well, and remember, too, campaigns were longer because they didn't have multiplayer.
Right, you didn't have multiplayer. You didn't have DLC. Now, you did have expansion packs. And I had the Call of Duty expansion pack. But here's the great thing and the terrible thing. You couldn't play the expansion pack unless you had the original game as well. You couldn't just get that.
Yeah.
I remember that. And it was really cool because the first expansion pack that I got was for the first Call of Duty game. And I went, this is great. I've beaten the Call of Duty campaign 80,000 times, so much so that I know, where the enemies are going to come from, so I can just sit there and be waiting.
Oh, sure.
And then you get this, and it's more story.
Yeah.
More story. It wasn't multiplayer or a new zombies map or anything. It was more story, and you were invested in your characters more so than in any of these other games. Awkward silence.
No, I'm going to agree. I mean, for me, I'm a little bit older than
You're
all of
old.
you. I'm really old.
You're like 80,000 billion quadrillion.
I'm like
in
a
pounds.
million years old. Wow.
In pounds.
Wow. Thank you. I'm girthy. You little bugger, you.
No, what did you say? We're
generous.
We're generous.
Oh yeah, we're generous.
We're generous in our size.
So you do have a little bit of an older.
I do have an older generation on you guys.
You're on the 64.
You know what? I was in the era that it was the
Atari.
true.
You played Pong.
I did.
I mean, so did I. Pong was great.
No, I played in the quintessential video game era. It was the era that involved a lot of consoles, a lot of console wars, and it was a huge, huge time in the 80s. Like, the 80s were a huge, huge time for video games.
Did you go to the arcade?
I did, actually.
That's really
cool. I did, yeah.
I wish we had arcades like that.
We had a Top Dog here in Pennsylvania.
I am the Top Dog. Get it? Yeah.
No.
Apparently not.
I got hot fives from everybody.
And we used to go to Top Dog, and me and my brother, when we were
You got a milkshake and a soda. And
you would pay 39 cents for a hot dog. 39 cents.
That's a lot of hot
awesome.
dogs.
59 cents for a cheeseburger or for a hamburger. 39 cents for a hot dog. And that was an awesome place to go. You spent like $10. You played for the whole day.
Yeah.
You got tons of quarters, and you were good to go.
Yep.
Now, in that era in the 80s, there was Nintendo.
Yep.
Sega.
Yep.
Neo Geo.
You got to the
Atari. In my era was ColecoVision as well.
Okay.
Which was the cheap generic, had a thumbstick with the number pad on it.
Yep.
Oh, that thing was awesome. Awesome. There was Dreamcast. There was the Genesis. There was Nintendo 64, Super Nintendo, regular Nintendo.
The Nintendo 64 was a great console.
PlayStation.
The best way to fix that thing...
Oh, yeah.
Even though on the cartridges it said, do not blow.
Not blow.
That was the first thing. A game didn't work, you pulled that baby out and you just
You blow
as hard as you can inside of that thing and you shove it down in there.
And it worked.
And it worked.
You blew on it like a firecracker. You were like... You jammed that sucker right in there.
And you would do that with
like
the
you
old
were
memory
punching the
cards, too.
lights out. Like you were punching its guts out. You were like, yeah! But you know what? For me, my favorite game system, and now that they've just redone it and came back out with it for Xbox, was Shenmue. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that game. It came out for...
Can you stop cursing at me?
I know. It came out for the Sega Dreamcast, which was an awesome system for its time, by the way, because it actually had... it was the first controller you could hold with two hands, and it was one controller, but it had a Game Boy-like memory card. Which was awesome, because you could put it inside your controller, and it would give you a little screen on your controller to do things.
Nice.
And I thought that was really, really awesome and innovative for its time.
Yeah.
Quentin Klinchek is telling us that you didn't want to blow in the core because it oxidized the metal core. But you know what? We blew as hard as we could.
Oh, yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Like it was on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's why it broke so many controllers.
What about you, David?
For me, I have a couple I had in mind, but the first one I'm going to say is definitely a Madden franchise. The Madden franchise, to be honest,
No,
right
what was the first one you had?
First one?
My first one was 05 with McNabb on the cover.
That was actually 06 with McNabb.
You're right. 06 with
I
McNabb
had
on the cover.
Techno Bowl, buddy.
No one loves you.
My first one was 04 with Vic on the cover.
Ooh.
And then
That's
I remember
terrible.
I remember when 05 had come out, and that I got that opening day, and that was like my favorite game for so long.
Vic was the most OP character in video game history.
Yes. I've always loved the Madden franchise. I think it's crap the past couple of years, quite honestly. And that's why it saddens me so much. Man, the long nights spent playing that game.
All right, now that Tony's gone.
The long nights spent playing that with having like friends over.
Yep.
We'd stay up all night on a Saturday night or a Friday night playing Madden constantly.
Yep.
Or even ESPN NFL 2K5, which I think is the best football
One of the
game.
best football games ever.
And I still think it is. And it's, 13
Boomer
years later?
Esiason, right? Is that
Yep. Yep, 13 years later. It was huge. And I love the franchise. And that's why it saddens me today where the franchise is.
Oh.
I feel
I
like
have
it's...
video games that I played in my youth, yes.
Well, you can shut up for a second. What game do you have?
Bring that a little closer so you can hear me.
It was Hello Kitty.
And it was
It was
great.
Dora the Explorer, and it was a side scroller, and you had to say into the console, "No swiper, no swiping."
The Mickey Mouse Adventure.
No, my first console was the 64, and I remember specifically, like, we had a computer room, like, you'd have sometimes, like the leather chair that you...
Yes.
Yeah. So, Mario Kart on the 64, Super Mario 64, or whatever that was called.
Yeah.
Mario Party?
Mario Party?
Did you Mario Party?
No, we didn't get into that until we had a Wii when I was in, like, 6th grade.
Boo.
That's the corner over there if you have to Wii.
That's
You
the P
let me
corner.
talk, I'm talking.
No, the corner's over there if you have to Wii.
We also...
Wee-wing over there.
We also had Powerpuff Girls game because all girls, we love Powerpuff Girls.
She's the oldest. She's second oldest of
second
4.
oldest.
If you had to be a Powerpuff Girl, who would you choose?
That crab lady.
Hang on. The name was him.
Yeah.
I loved Bubbles, but I would have been a Blossom for sure.
No Buttercup?
No, I don't have the
Which one was
personality.
which?
Blossom was the redhead who was the leader. Bubbles was the cutesy blonde, and Buttercup was the
rebel middle child.
Yeah, and I'm more of a leader in this
I never understood. I never got that. Literally, that is what childhood is. The oldest is generally the leader of the group. The middle child is the rebel, and then the youngest is the one that everybody loves the most.
Yeah.
I can say that from experience.
Yep.
Because I'm the youngest.
We also had a WWE game.
Wow.
To go off of the Powerpuff
You were into
Girls.
wrestling.
No, we sucked at that game.
Oh, okay.
Everybody did.
I didn't know what any of the ones did.
The WWE games are some of the worst video games
horrible.
For control.
They had 3 moves.
Atrocious.
And I didn't know any of them.
Yeah.
I was just hitting buttons.
I think all of us at least played this game, if not have great childhood memories of this one. So I'm going to bring it up. Super Smash Brothers.
Yes!
Ooh.
Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Maddie's shaking her head no. That's
yes.
okay.
I went to an after prom party where all they did was play that, and I was bored out of my mind. I don't
Just 'cause you
understand the
didn't
game.
play
That sounds like a party I want to go to.
I know, right?
I'm in!
I don't usually like going to
I've
parties,
always
but
hung
Alcohol,
out-
throw that out.
Let's call him up.
Woo! Just give me Super Smash Bros. All night.
Okay, but which one was your favorite? My
My
group
favorite
of friends,
party was the one where...
Stop it.
Oh.
My group of friends played Brawl the most, but I really think, quite frankly, that the first one was the best one in terms of just... I know it didn't have a great character, huge character roster, and a huge amount of stages, but it was just so much fun.
I move that closer for me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to say Melee because Melee is the first
was
one I
good.
played. I liked Brawl for its larger character roster and some of the other modes. Like I remember doing the 100-man Brawl. Like that was super hard, but super fun and addicting.
Yeah.
To do it with different characters. But I'm gonna have to say Melee because it was the first.
Melee was
exposure I had
good.
to Super
Melee was
Smash
good.
Bros.
There really hasn't been a bad one because the game is the same game every time, just with added characters.
Yeah.
So it's not like they really innovate a lot of
And
stuff.
it's the one Nintendo game where I can say I really love that.
Yeah,
game.
yep. Well, I love Super Mario 64 as well, and the Nintendo 64 Spider-Man game where you swang from the sky. You didn't attach to buildings. It was just you swang on a web and it just went up into the sky and disappeared. And you're like, oh, would you look at that? I always played, who was the character you always played as? I was always Pikachu. I never won. I won't say I never won. I very rarely won. But I would just run around, especially we'd play at Hime J Castle or however you say it. It's Link's stage.
I love that map.
And I would just run underneath everybody and call down lightning bolts. So they're up there duking it out, and I'm just calling down lightning bolts until everybody gets so mad at me, and they come down and just, because Pikachu is the lightest thing ever, so they just pick me up and throw me off the stage.
You can't lightning dash.
No.
Yeah, nothing.
See, and I'm trying to think now because I wasn't allowed to play as certain characters because, I don't know if you've experienced this, if you play with certain friends, and it's their console or whatever, they call a certain character.
That's true.
Okay, so
I hate that.
But my
I was
friends
never
always were the same characters.
I was never allowed to play Link
because somebody always was Link.
Yeah.
He
Because
called
he
Link.
was the most OP one in the game.
Yeah, he was.
He always called Link. I usually ended up playing Kirby the most.
Underrated because you swallowed people and threw them up off the edge.
And I would play as Captain
And
Falcon.
you got their Captain Falcon was so overrated. Though.
I always loved Captain Falcon for the Falcon punch.
Yes,
I just
but you
loved
could
that.
never land it because it takes 80 minutes. Falcon, and then you're being kicked around.
But if you could land it, you sent them flying,
Right,
and it
but-
was rewarding.
and-
I sucked, but I had fun.
But the problem with it was you couldn't even sneak up on somebody and do it because he screams at the top of his
Falcon
lungs,
punch!
Falcon punch! And so you can't even sneak up behind somebody as they're fighting somebody else because you do it, you sneak up behind somebody and go, Falcon, and they turn around and kick you before you punched them. Who did you play as, Tony? That's a strange character.
You know what? I don't really remember who I played as all the time.
You played as Mario, didn't you?
I didn't play a lot. I didn't play as much as you guys have. When friends had the game, I never bought the game myself.
Oh no, I've never owned it. Never.
I
never
owned
had.
Brawl.
I never owned a system that played it.
Okay.
So I've never owned a Nintendo system. So
every time I go over to somebody's house, I would play as a different character.
okay.
I don't really remember who
yeah,
was
my friend.
in,
It was me, Ian, who's not here tonight, but he normally is, and then our friends Adam and Tyler, and we'd play together. And I was always Pikachu. Tyler was always Link. Adam played because we would play either Melee or Brawl, and I can't remember who his name was, but he was the guy that like had all of those little things that followed him around that you could throw him. You know who I'm talking about?
Yoshi?
No. The different colored. He was a human.
Omar.